are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for on the show. We had a great episode today with Claudine Pereira. Now, if that name sounds familiar, she's actually a previous guest, episode 40, that came out a few years ago. So a little bit about Claudine Pereira, what she's doing now. Now, everyone knows from episode 40, she was talking about her coaching business. Well, now she just released a new book called The 7 C's of Leadership Mastery, Unleash the Leader in You. So a little bit about the book. So in her book, The 7 C's of Leadership, Claudine practiced one of her golden principles, brevity. Each well-constructed paragraph succinctly describes one of the 7 key success factors of leadership with the right and consistent mix of theory, working examples, and personal experiences. The concepts make sense and are a good read for leaders new in their craft. And those of us who have been around for a while and could use a bit of course correction, it's a book that I definitely recommend. So we're going to learn about the book writing process for Claudine, and I know it's going to be a lot of fun. So sit back and absorb. All right, guys, we have a surprise. She was previously on my podcast before, and that was my first repeat guest, Claudine Pereira. How are you?
I'm great, Ken. How are you doing? It's lovely to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It was great. Now, she's all the way back in, when was the last time you were on? I think you were like maybe a couple of years ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, a couple of
I think
years
it was
at
like
least.
episode 40. I believe you were episode 40, and we just passed 100. So
you did.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you
That's
very much.
phenomenal.
Yeah. So
Wow, I feel honored. I think I'm still on your website somewhere.
still on there somewhere. But yeah, no,
somewhere.
it's great to have you on, and we're here to talk about a book. And what's the name of this book,
indeed.
Claudine?
So my latest book is called The 7 C's of Leadership Mastery, and it is a book all around leadership. Whether you are a leader already in an organization, whether you are a leader in business, whether you're an up-and-coming leader, or you think you might want to work into a leadership role, or you could be one of those unsung leaders that, every day you're just doing something innately that screams leadership. This book is for you.
Wow. So and usually I'll start the podcast with, what's your story? But I guess for this case, for your book, what's the story? Like, where did it come
What's
from?
the story? So this book has actually been in the making since just before COVID. And to give the backstory, I always wanted to write a leadership or / entrepreneurial book. And then of course COVID hit and things got shelved. So this past September I celebrated 10 years in business. So what I decided to do, was to wrap up the book in tandem with my 10-year anniversary. I put myself under lots of pressure to do it because I really wanted this to be a gift to my clients, to my community. I have a very large community that has supported me. So I went on the journey to finish this book in the last year. And really, what I wanted to do was share 25 years of my leadership experience with whoever is interested in hearing it. So the book contains a lot of real life examples, case studies that have sort of been moved around, a lot of tactical leadership tips, as well as learning, like an action plan at the end, so that you can sort of walk away with some things that you can implement.
Yeah. So how does it differ? Because I mean, if you ask anyone, okay, how does it make what makes your book stand out? Because I'm sure if you go to any chapters or any Amazon and you type up, leadership books, there's like a gajillion that shows up. So what makes yours so special?
Oh, that's a tough question. Well, here's a few things. So here's for those of you that are watching the video. It's a small, neat, and tidy book. So it's like a handbook almost that you can just toss it in your bag. The pages are it's easy to read and understand. And I've segmented it into, I think what's different about my book, because doing a lot of research, actually coming up with the name, I looked on Amazon, does this book name exist? And doesn't exist anywhere. So first of all, the 7 C's of Leadership Mastery is an original. And it is a play on the word of the 7 C's being, the C is, it's up and down. And that's what leadership is like. It's a very up and down, not linear journey. And so that's really that's the first thing that kind of makes it a little different, is that, the play on the words. And then I've chosen 7 words that for me stand out, that represent leadership. 7 words that begin with the letter C. Originally, this was built around the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Oh.
So when I first built the keynote, so the keynote was built at the same time as I was doing the book. And I watched Castaway. So if you've watched Castaway, it's a great movie around leadership. So I pulled a lot from there, and then I came up with my 7 C's. So it's structured in a way that I'm just not blathering on about, what is leadership. It's about learning. So it has some real life examples. It's about the theory behind leadership. And I think the thing that's also different is I've kind of matched it to what I see with my leadership clients. Like, what do we need right now? What do we need to hear right now? The world needs more leaders. We are in turmoil. And I think that my book really represents that essential guide, that handbook of life to go, you can go out and be a trailblazer in leadership if you just follow some of these tactics that I show you in my book, and obviously make it your own.
Of course, yeah. And so, like, what are some of you talked about the research that you did. So what kind of research did you go into? Like, did you research specific leaders or you talked to any like psychiatrists or psychologists or like CEO? I assume you talked to, you pretty much talked to all CEOs, but was there anything that stood out there? So how did you really gather all this to you, aside from your personal stories?
Yeah, so of course I had a lot of personal stories that went into it, but as I was in the journey, I chose 4 really tough beta readers. So they were my litmus test. And my research was
I'm sorry,
really, I
backtrack.
gathered a
What is
lot
a beta
from,
reader?
yeah.
So some listeners might not know what's a beta
Oh,
reader.
yes, a beta reader. So it's the person that is going to, once your book is in draft form, they basically read it and they give you feedback. They give you feedback on it. So it's like a test. It's like it goes into test mode
Oh,
almost.
like QA for like some people creating a program or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like a quality is set, so for example, if you're releasing software, it needs to go through like a test mode. So, once I gathered all my information from, some of the VPs that I, work with their teams, even my leaders themselves, they were honestly my biggest part of my research in terms of what they're not getting from their leaders and what's really missing there in the workplace and also in the entrepreneurial world. So just by sort of talking to people, and what I really pulled out is themes and trends. And that's what I wrote about, right? I write about things like empathy, validation of emotions. These are some of the things that, we sort of talk about very loosely. But are so prevalent and important in the workplace. So after sort of pulling in a lot of that research, my testers, my 4 very tough testers, ripped it apart. I didn't want nice feedback. I know, but it's no good to me if you say, well, that's nice, it's good, it's great, that's wonderful. I don't want that. I want that at the end when someone's read it, write me an
Yes.
Amazon review. But when it goes into test mode, I want you to tell me if something doesn't look in the right order, if grammatically it's not correct. Give me the straight goods. Don't give me whimsical feedback. I don't want that. So it was vetted, quite stringently.
Right.
Quite stringently.
Well, that's really cool actually, because I think a lot of us make that mistake is that we want to hear like you said, the niceties of these things to say, yeah, we want all the good stuff, and don't tell me anything bad because I don't know if I can handle it and all that sort of stuff. But
I
it
know.
doesn't do you any good in that case, right? Because you actually want that feedback. Because, like you said, if it's all your family and friends reading it, I'm sure they're going to say all the nice stuff. But you kind of want also sometimes the ones where, yeah, they said, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't flow right.
1,000%. And sometimes again, I learn better when you've got to give me some corrective feedback in terms of how this can be better. It was very important for me before putting, my name on the front of this book, that it was vetted. And even still, my editor went through it. There were still some errors. Like, it just bugged me. I had a meeting and I was like, oh, I'm not happy about this. And for some of my really analytical clients, one client, she's amazing actually, and I'm so thankful she did this. She read the book twice and sent me all the feedback of things that I had missed and the editor had missed. And I'm so grateful because we have a chance now to change that. We have a chance now to upload our files and we can change the next rounds of print as people buy them on Amazon.
Well,
Plug.
what I find what I find interesting too is that even if we have all like the spelling and grammar check on Microsoft Word or Google Docs, all that sort of stuff, things can still miss, like especially the context behind it. And the word might be spelled correctly, but it's just the wrong word. right? Like where
a
versus
thousand
where,
percent.
right? Like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. And some of them, I was reading another chapter there, I picked up something else. I'm like, oh, you have to be kidding me. How did we miss this? But the problem is when you're writing a book, and for those of you out there that have written a book, you know the pain you're feeling. In those last 2 weeks leading up to, it's going, the print has to go to your graphic person. And then, you need your final files so that you can get your books in hand. Literally, my books for my book signing that happened, they literally arrived the night before. I'm not kidding you. The
wow.
box was the night before. That's how tight our timelines were. It's very stressful. So when you're editing and then you're signing off on the final files, you don't see the wood through the forest because you've been reading this thing for the last year. It's very weird. It's like a bit of I've talked to a few authors actually afterwards who've said, yeah, it feels like a bit of a letdown. I said, it does. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, well, let me ask you this then. So now that you've written this book, and we're
Hmm.
obviously we're here to promote the book and really talk a little bit about it. Not we're not going to do any spoilers though, right? Because we don't want to, do all the, give all the advice in your book that no one reads the book, right? But
Yes.
when are you like, are you going to be planning to write another one in another 10 years? Or because the only reason I'm asking is because one of my brother-in-law,
Hmm.
he's a fantasy writer, and he
Oh,
writes, like, his thing is strictly ebooks. And when I come to visit with my sister and him and my nephew, he does have a hard copy of his book. And he wrote a ton of them, right? And the challenge
wow.
that he mentioned, one thing he mentioned to me, and one thing I'm noticing as well, because
Okay.
sometimes I'll ask, "Oh, where is he?" And my sister's like, "Oh, he's writing. He's writing." I'm like, "He's always writing." And you kind of mentioned that once he puts out a
Yeah.
book, he goes, like
Hmm.
you said, he goes through the experience that you do with the publisher, the editors, and publishing, and I think he
Yeah.
posts
Yeah.
out stuff on Amazon as well. Is that his fan base is so rabid that they consume the book, because ebooks maybe they can range between, like, 90 to 100 pages. So not a huge
Yeah.
500-page textbook, but
Right.
they absorb the book so quickly that they realize, when's the next one? What's the next one? What's the next one?
Very
Do you have
interesting.
that same kind of feedback from
Mm,
from your readers so far?
not yet. I'll be, I'll be, well, no, because it's been only, the book was released on September the 7th, and it hit #1 bestseller in under 30
My
hours. I was
goodness.
shocked. I was floored. And again, that's just my amazing community, my amazing young lady who does all my social media in terms of promotion. And I don't think everyone's had a chance to read it yet.
Right.
So I have had a great amount of reviews. No one's actually said, "Oh, when's the next one?" But I've had a lot of positive feedback that when reading the book, it sounds like me. It's really nice because I know her and I know how she sounds. It sounds like she's speaking to me.
Hmm.
So not as yet, but you never know. But there is. I have a few more under my belt. I don't think for next year. Maybe I might start next year, but maybe 2026 revision. And, I love this size. I think it would be, I don't know if it would be around leadership. It might be more business.
That's
So
what I
I'm
was gonna
thinking of something
that
around
was my follow-up. Is it
sales.
gonna be
Oh,
so
we'll see.
this first one's about leadership, and you could
Yeah.
have, like, volume 1 of, like, 10, right? So you wanna hit, like, a sales one, I think you just said. You might wanna touch a business
Yes.
one as well.
Yeah, so I think my initial, thoughts were, because leadership does form part of business as well, and I really encourage my clients that are entrepreneurs to be a leader in your field, right? Be that trailblazer. But there are some other gaps. Sales I would love to tackle because as an entrepreneur, sales is a really tough thing, and have a different spin on it, like a sales book. 'Cause again, there's many out there, and branding in the
Ooh.
workplace, branding in business, and branding in the workplace is another one I would love to tackle. Not sure in which particular order. Maybe branding kind of speaks to me as being a next one, because as a leader, you got to have a brand presence. In business, it's not just about my colors or, my bookmarks, nicely brand hit just that come with the book,
Uh,
but it's also about how you show up, how you carry yourself. How do you carry yourself in the workplace? What do you say? What do you do? How do you dress? What are you known for? What do you want to be known for? And I think these are the conversations that need to happen right these days in the work right now, but are not really happening. And so that's my gap. I always look to see what is the gap and how can I show that with my expertise.
No, that's right. Like you're adding different pieces to someone's tool belt to be an overall better person, right? Especially in the business
Yeah.
world. Like, and you talked about how you look and how you dress and all that sort of stuff. Like that reminds me of like a few years ago. So people, listeners who can't really see me, but the viewers who can see me, I'm wearing a simple golf shirt. Now, when I was working at a previous company, I would always wear a golf shirt and khakis with white sneakers. That was pretty much what I would wear if I have to go to the office. This is pre-COVID, right? And this is to the point that I almost felt like at the company I was at, they were doing like this big some IT migration thing where a lot of the people in IT were wearing a golf shirt and khakis and white shoes. So everyone assumed I was part of IT, right? And I remember one time I was just YouTubing something, and I don't know why. I think I might have YouTubed something like men's fashion or something to that effect. And I saw this one gentleman. He is based in Wisconsin, actually. He was very well kept, spoke very nicely. He was in the military. He has a wife and like 4 or 5 kids, and his YouTube channel was strictly on men's fashion, how to dress for success, and the difference between a sport coat and a blazer. Most people have no clue the difference of the two. I actually know a little bit of the difference, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So next thing you know, I started to dress up, going to the office, and to the point that my daughter, who was a lot younger at the time, she looked at me and said, "Daddy, why are you handsome?" Right?
So
What?
cute.
I said, "You like doing daddy styles and profiles?" She's like, "Yeah." I
Yes.
start wearing suits to the office. All the different colors, try different things. But the funny thing is, if your coworkers see you and you're always in a golf shirt and khakis, and you suddenly start wearing a suit, you know what their first question was to me? What time's your interview? Right? That's the first thing they say.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
love that. I love that moment in time because I actually got nominated for, like, when companies have some fun things at the end of the year, like the holidays, like most likely to, you know, not hit the mute button during their work meeting, right?
Right.
Or most likely to forget to clean up their background or something. But mine was I was nominated for 2. Most likely to drink the most caffeine, which was I was nominated for that one, and best dressed.
Best dressed. That's wonderful.
I was 0 for 2,
Yeah.
but that was okay.
0 for
But
2.
that was
That's
okay. But
okay.
I enjoyed dressing up. But I think people forget that. It's like,
They do. And I love this. I'm going to piggyback on it because if you're listening, no matter what you're doing in your life, we always used to have a saying back home, clothes don't make us a man. However, it doesn't matter. It's that first impression. You have, I don't know what the rule is, like 2-second rule that someone forms an opinion of you the minute they see you, And, dress is a big part of that. So if you are working in an office environment, it is important that you dress to your own personal brand versus, I worked in an environment once. I was taking over a team, and they were an acquisition to us, and they were all their culture was jeans. So of course I walk in my high heels, my suits, and I'm like, it's not Friday. They're like, yeah, this is just how we dress around here. I'm like, okay, cool. And I didn't think anything of it, but I didn't change. I always wear my jeans on a Friday, and I just still wore my suits and my dresses every day. And what I started to notice was some of the leaders on the team the men started to wear dress shirts and trousers, or pants, and they started to dress up. The people that really, and I didn't say anything. I just was sort of being that unsung hero, that trailblazer. And some people that really cared about their appearance and their brand followed.
yeah.
It's a huge topic. So I really think now that you've sort of brought this up, that might just be the next
There
one.
you go. There you go. And last story before we talk more about your book here was,
Yeah.
do you remember when the Toronto Raptors were in the playoffs and actually won the world championship?
Yes, I
So
do.
during
Yes,
during that
yes.
time, this is 2019, I believe, for the listeners who don't know that. So around the 2019, when the Toronto Raptors were in the NBA Finals, I think one of my friends one of our friends said, "Hey, let's have a watch party at our house." So of course, all of our kids were friends there. So all the husbands and wives, we show up, and they're all
Right.
wearing like Raptor jerseys or Raptor, I don't know, something like T-shirts or something like that. I show up there with a pink dress shirt and kind of like a nice little sport coat with jeans.
Yeah.
And they said,
Nice.
"Wow,
What's your
why?"
Raptors?
They said, "Well, I wanted to, dress up." He's like, "You
Dress
look like you're in the Raptors front office." Right? So I actually look like I was on the business side of the Toronto Raptors. I'm like, "I'll take it. If we win,
Take it.
I'll take it even more." So
Take it even more. Wonderful. I love it. And I think people that don't realize and recognize, whether you're a leader in an organization or even a business owner, how you dress is such a massive piece to your external brand.
absolutely. So, all right, back to your book here, because that's the most important thing that we
Okay,
have here.
back to the book.
So
All
like
right.
before you were, as you were writing your book, Claudine, and
Mhm.
I'm sure you said you looked at other books and from different
Yes.
things. What was the thing that you felt that they were either missing out on, or they kept kind of like, oh man, all these are the same thing. Like that's why you wanted to separate your book from there. So what mistakes did you kind of see
Yeah.
that the traditional, leadership book was about?
Some of the traditional ones to me weren't even actually about leadership. It was more about, not leading. It was about more, those some old fashioned, antiquated boss notions, wasn't leadership at all. Nothing really sort of piqued my interest other than John Maxwell, who I love, and I
Oh,
love all of his leadership books. Fantastic. But nothing really struck me. There was nothing new. There was nothing original. And what I didn't want to do was the same old, leadership kind of, I like real stories. Rick, what's his name? Hillier. He was a general in the, in Canada here.
Randy Hillier?
He was a general.
Oh, was it
He
really?
was the guy that led the pandemic, Rick
Oh yeah, it
Hillier.
was Rick
He
Hillier. Yeah,
led
it
the
was. I'm thinking
pandemic.
of something else. Okay.
Yeah, he's got a fantastic book around leadership. And what I loved about his, not that I copied anything, but I loved it because what he did was he tied in his principles about leadership with his story. And so what I didn't want was just an old fashioned, okay, I'm going to read a little bit here about, oh, that's what you need to do. Yes, you need to talk to your
Yeah,
people. Didn't
motivation,
want,
team building.
yeah,
All right.
motivation, like bland, just run of the mill stuff. I wanted something new and fresh that somebody could walk away with and do something with. So I consider my book an original. I do consider it an original. We'll see. Once you read it, you can tell me and go, I don't know about that. But,
No, that's
I consider it an original.
well, yeah, because I think what most people think is that their life is not interesting enough to make a book, right? And I think you kind of that,
Yeah.
and like myself, I joke that, oh, maybe I should write a book about myself. I'm like, I have no clue what the hell I would write about. There was nothing I can think about, right? But you found that thing that you said this would actually. It's not just because the problem that you have generally is that, okay, Claudine runs her company, and she's training and helping all of these clients. So she's helping a lot of people. Well, what is it? Well, how can I help others that if they can't come here to Canada for me to help them, or even it's not the same through Zoom
Yeah.
and they just want something.
No,
You found a way to spread your message to like hundred millions of people
absolutely.
who can't come
Yes.
see you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. And, the nice thing with Amazon, you can see where people have bought your books. So we've had a fair amount sold here in Canada. There's been a copy sold in Germany, one in Spain, 2 in Mexico, a lot in the UK, my UK followers who are listening, thank you. A lot in England. And so it's a blessing just to be able to see that this little book, even I talk about I go way back to not my childhood, my teens.
Right.
That's where it all starts. My early childhood in dancing school in Reading in England. And those are my early days of leadership, right? So I dug way back in my past, way back into, it was actually very cathartic to do that because I've got a lot of experience. When you say about, oh, well, what would you write about? You've got more experiences this is just a snippet of all of it.
Right.
It's just really a snippet. The book ended up in Italy. So Monica Cleaver, who was my first dance teacher, who I'm still, dancing with to this day, who's in the UK, she took it to Italy. So I've got a picture of her in Italy reading the book, and I
Ah.
talk about her. I actually dedicated the book to her.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, so it's been great.
Okay, no, that's perfect. So where can people find your book one more time? It's on where?
Amazon,
Well,
Barnes and Noble, Indigo, Indigo and Chapters, and Walmart, I believe, online.
all right.
So, yep.
All right. Well, thanks again, Claudine, for being on
Thank
the
you,
show.
Ken. Thanks for having me.
Hey, do you need an error-free website? Do you need transcription that's accurate and on time? Would you like to remove noise from your video or audio recording? Do you need a spokesperson for your business? If so, we can help. At Northway Capital Group, we are happy to announce that we are now providing website testing services, audio transcriptions, and audio cleanup, as well as spokesperson services. We would love to help you on your next project. Contact us for more information at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.